Hello, scoundrels, and welcome to the first episode of Why You Should Play, a series where I just shamelessly shill for all of my favorite RPGs. So today, as you can see, we're going to talk about why you should play Blades in the Dark, a game designed by John Harper. It's my favorite tabletop role-playing game, as you can see with the copious amounts of bookmarks I have throughout this very well-made book. Like this binding and the material of the cover and the pages and everything, the art in here, the diagrams, it's so well designed just from a visual and physical standpoint. This is one of my essential hard copy books. Like the PDF will not do. This is great to just hold. And so, yeah, I hope that today I can share with you a little bit about what makes Blades in the Dark my favorite game and what makes it so good for what it sets out to do. So, first thing is, what is Blades in the Dark about? Well, if we take it straight from the designer, we see that Blades in the Dark is a tabletop role-playing game about a crew of daring scoundrels seeking their fortunes on the haunted streets of an industrial fantasy city. There are heists, chases, occult mysteries, dangerous bargains, bloody skirmishes, and, above all, riches to be had, if you're bold enough to seize them. You and your fledgling crew must thrive amidst the threats of rival gangs, powerful families, vengeful ghosts, the bluecoats of the City Watch, and the siren song of your scoundrel's own vices. Will you rise to power in the criminal underworld? What are you willing to do to get to the top? So, that is the description given on the back of the book and on their website. So, taking from that, you can see that Blades in the Dark is great for games about criminals, daring operations in order to increase their influence in the underworld, and just all of this like juicy criminal heist action. So how does it do all of this? Well, let's get into the mechanics and how the game works. So at its core, Blades has an extremely simple yet powerful action resolution system. So first you establish your position, which is basically how bad it will be if you fail. This goes from a scale of desperate to risky to controlled, with risky being the default. The assumption here is that you're only rolling when the outcome is uncertain, or if the result would be interesting. And so your position is contingent on a lot of factors, almost all fictional positioning. So where you're standing, what kind of gear or equipment you have, who you know, all of this stuff will change your position. And then you establish the effect, or how good it will be if you succeed, which is on a scale from like lesser to all the way up to greater, basically. And this is the same thing. It can be influenced by your equipment, by who you know, the preparations you did, just anything in the narrative that can justify why you will have a greater effect. And it can also be reduced based on the fiction as well. If you're one dude fighting against like 100 guys, you're probably going to have a lesser effect whenever you try to do something against that horde of enemies, unless you have something that allows you to move beyond that. Like there's a cutter ability that lets you take on large groups of people without reducing the effect. And position and effect is determined by a like consensus at the table. Everybody's involved in this game's mechanics. You all discuss them at once. And then you roll a number of d6s equal to the dots that you have in the action that you're doing. So if you're setting up a bomb, that would be Tinker. If you're punching somebody in the face, that's probably Skirmish. And then you roll that many d6s, and you pick the highest result. And so if the highest result is a 1 to a 3, that's usually a complete failure. You don't accomplish what you wanted to do, and something bad happens. If it's a 4 to a 5, you get what you wanted, but at a price. You can like do something like take damage, or make a lot of noise, or make your escape harder. You still accomplish what you set out to do. This is by no means a failure, but it comes with some extra strings attached. And then if you roll a 6, it's you do whatever you wanted to do, full stop, full success. And so you can get bonuses to your dice roll in several different ways, but the most common way is to push yourself, which is to take 2 stress in order to get a +1 on the roll. And stress is like the resource that you're constantly managing throughout the game. You'll increase it during a score and then be able to reduce it during downtime, and we'll talk about that later. But this simple, generalized system is so flexible for the game, and it's really easy for new players to grasp. It's fiction first, so you just decide what you want to do, and then you match the action to what you want to do. And and the player has the final say in what action you roll. The GM will never call for a roll, like in D&D where you call for a saving throw. The rolls are always player driven. When the player wants to do something, they have to make the roll. And it's great because everything in the game is tied around this single unified mechanic. Whenever you do anything, you will be making an action roll, and it is all resolved the same way, with one exception, and that's resistance, and we'll talk about that next. So resistance allows you to soften the consequences of failure. You will be failing a lot because the game is designed so that you'll be rolling a mixed success a majority of the time if you're marginally good at what you're trying to do. So a way to soften the consequences so you don't consequence yourself to death is by resisting them. So this can be applied to anything. It just doesn't have to be damage. It could be you're sneaking and somebody spots you. You could resist that consequence and do something so that you're not just straight up discovered. You could even resist accidentally insulting a noble when you roll poorly or get a mixed success on a consort roll or something like that. Any action roll can be resisted, and that is so useful because you don't look like an idiot when you fail. Something that can happen a lot of the times, especially if your game uses critical fumble tables, is that your super strength hero can just look like kind of like a Monty Python character failing all the time. But with the resistance roll, as long as you have the stress to pay, you can soften most of the blows. Like, you can get shot in the face, and if you resist it, you won't die instantly. It gives characters a lot of durability, and it also gives them a lot of opportunity to take risks, because you know that even if you fail, you have a way out, always. And so this is great because it also encourages the GM to not hold back. They can throw stuff at the players, and they know that the characters will always have a way out, but they will always pay some sort of price for it. So speaking of paying the price, there's a mechanic called the Devil's Bargain. So the Devil's Bargain is another way to gain dice in the game, and it is basically the GM or any of the players, at any time a roll is being made, can propose a bargain, which is basically an additional twist or consequence to that player's action in addition to a bonus on the roll. So the fact that players can propose these is great because it really gets the players invested in the narrative and makes it so that the GM isn't the complete arbiter of the story. It makes things more interesting too, because I got to the point in some of my games where players were just begging for a Devil's Bargain because they needed the extra die, and it was great for me and the narrative because it adds extra stuff. So for example, say that you're shooting somebody from a very long distance and you really need to make this shot. And so you can, like I, as the GM, or another player could propose the Devil's Bargain where you can get a +1 on the roll, but the noise of the shot will attract attention and somebody might report it to the Bluecoats or the city guard. So, no matter what happens, even if they succeed, the Devil's Bargain always goes into play. So they'll get the +1 to the roll, but their shot will probably generate them some extra heat or at least the attention of the guards. And a simple act of shooting somebody from a rooftop just got more interesting, and they're more likely to do it. But there's also narrative consequences and stuff like this. And so, other than the Devil's Bargain and the Resistance, the final mechanic I really wanted to touch on is the flashback. I think you could say it's one of the defining mechanics of the game. You know how in every heist movie we see only a portion of the planning that goes into it, and then we see that kind of stuff revealed in flashbacks. So for example, in Ocean's 11, we see the heist go on first, and everybody is like doing their roles and, well, not literally roles, accomplishing what they set out to do. And then every so often we flash back to show how they prepared for this situation and how they overcame each of the obstacles. Blades in the Dark works exactly in the same way, and it lets you jump straight into the action with little to no planning, and then you can flash back whenever you want. If the situation requires it, you can do it at any time, and it just costs a variable amount of stress each time. And this is great because I hate planning sessions. I hate when you just sit around for 3 hours and the players just plan about what they're going to do and not actually do it. So the flashback mechanic really makes it so that you can just go on to the heist or the mission or whatever you're doing straight away. You don't have to worry about planning for it. And then the characters aren't incompetent because you can retroactively plan as you're going on. And it makes them seem more competent and prepared, even if you as the player wouldn't have seen this coming. And so we have all of these mechanics, and there's even more that I didn't even touch on. But how are you going to keep track of all this stuff? Well, you're in luck, because Blades in the Dark has the single best character sheets I have ever seen out of a game, and I have not seen them topped yet. So this is the character sheet. I mean, like look at it. It has all the mechanics there. You barely need to write anything on it. You just fill out some dots or single word prompts. Like, this thing is beautiful. It is an amazing feat of design. It's got all of your gear, all your stats, all of your abilities, your harm, stress, everything about it, and a quarter of the page is dedicated to notes. It's just that compact. It's great. But it gets even better because your crew gets their own character sheet, and it is just as sexy and useful as the one for your character. So your crew levels up alongside your character, and it gains new abilities and features as you increase its reputation among the criminal underworld. So this game kind of rewards medium to long-term play, as you can really see your crew and your character evolve to fit what you need it to and all that kind of stuff. And there are 6 different crew types, so you can be like assassins, or you can be smugglers. There's all sorts of different crimes that you commit, and you can even be a cult. Like, who wouldn't want to be a criminal cult? And so, in addition to all this stuff, there's also like downtime, or what you do after a score. So you can do all sorts of things like heal your wounds, work on a long-term project, or even reduce your heat, basically getting the cops off your trail. You can also indulge in your vice to reduce the stress that you accumulate as your character regularly defies death and the law. But you can overindulge with your vice and get yourself into even more trouble, which makes for some great story developments. And so the downtime is a great way to like cool off, chill out after a really intense heist, and it also generates more story opportunities going forward. It's a great gameplay loop of gathering information, getting what kind of heist you want to do, going into the score where you actually do the action, and then downtime lets you address the things that happen during the action while also setting up for future heists and scenarios and stuff. It just works as a beautiful cycle. But with all of these mechanics and stuff, overall, how well does it pull off the genre that it's going for, the criminal or heist drama? And overall, I think it's the best heist or crime-based system out there. I don't think it's been topped yet. The simple action resolution system really encourages players to think outside the box, and you're rewarded with XP for trying desperate actions and performing the role of your playbook. And flashbacks and resistance rolls can make your character feel really powerful and competent while keeping the action flowing and the narrative interesting. And I love the non-binary resolution results, and they can make sure that even if you fail, you never really hit a dead end. And it's a breeze to GM, considering that there's no stat blocks for you to come up with and no dice that you have to roll. All your NPCs are reactive to what your characters do, and the game really encourages you to play to find out what happens. So you're going to be improvising more than you're going to be preparing. Most of my Blades in the Dark GM prep is maybe 20 minutes while I go over factions and characters and that kind of stuff. And so even though the game basically mandates you to never prepare, it doesn't leave you just out there with nothing. It has some great random tables and idea generation tools to help you keep flexible and not really have to plan much. And there's some great GM advice in there that you can take to most any other game as well. And I didn't even touch on progression, factions, or even half of the crew mechanics like turf. There's even more depth to this game than I covered here, and so you just need to go out and get a copy of it and play it. You won't be disappointed. So that's why you should play Blades in the Dark. Thanks for watching.